Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me at the table. I'm Thomas Donnerwick, and this week I'm back in studio, and I have the pleasure of sitting down with Darren Eultgen, the Chancellor of the Diocese of Great Falls-Billings. Darren, thank you for joining me today.
Sure, it's nice to be here.
Let's just start off with the broad picture of what a chancellor is. That's an interesting word that a lot of people don't necessarily hear very often.
That's true. So first, being a chancellor is not as cool as it sounds, because it does sound cool. And every diocese in the United States has a chancellor. And in general, a chancellor does about three things. A chancellor keeps the diocesan archive, so they keep track of what the bishop does and writes, and different news events, and all the things that sort of make up the chancery when it comes to keeping a record of what happens throughout the diocese at each of our parishes or with each of our priests. Secondly, we try to predict the future. We're in charge of planning. And what does it mean in the future in 5 years for some of our small communities or some of our large communities? What does our priesthood situation look like in 5 or 10 years? What does our income or expenses look like in 5 or 10 years? We try to do that. That's not always the easiest of things. There's also a number of things in canon law that a chancellor does and that a chancellor reviews before they go out. So we try to do those three things in addition to local things as well.
In addition to all of those kind of canonical things and those three main things that you listed, we are part of a smaller diocese, so most people in this building wear multiple hats. What other hats do you wear, and in what other ways are you supporting the ministry in Montana?
So I would say one of the things is sort of keeping things steady at the chancery, trying to. Some days more than others. And being a support here to our staff. Largely the chancellor traditionally has stayed in Great Falls and not gone out and done projects or not gone out and done things on their own, but are here as the bishop travels. Bishop Warfel used to travel 250 days a year. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Bishop Fleming were to do the same in the next couple of years. And so when a bishop is not present, how do we keep that stability here in the area? And then also as a support to our priests. Many of our priests are, the best of pastors and the best at dealing with their people, but also have their own issues where they struggle in certain areas of ministry, and we try to support them through that. Not only through my office, but through all the offices at the chancery. The chancellor also supports the other ministries here. And so, on one weekend a year, we do permanent deacon formation. Deacon Pete, working in the deacon formation office, and the office of deacons runs those whole weekends, but the chancellor oftentimes teaches one or two of those classes every single weekend as a support to that. And so there's some continuity with the bishop's office and through the diocese. The chancellor also sits on, I don't know how many, but 7 or 8 of the large committees of the diocese. So the Finance Council, the College of Consultors, the Priest Personnel Board, in trying to figure out, especially things like Personnel Board, if a priest is moving or retiring, who's the next good type of priest to go in there that's a good fit for that parish, that the parish is also a good fit for that type of priest. So we work to get all of those things at least a little sorted out. The Chancellor's office also brings in our foreign priests. So we have, every single week we're contacted by at least one foreign priest that wants to come to Montana. Sometimes it's because they know somebody. Hey, we know a priest at one of your parishes, and I'm from their original diocese, and he says that Montana is a great place and has good Catholics that are trying to pass down the faith to the next generation of Catholics. And I want to come and be a part of that too. So we regularly have priests contacting us from all over the country and all over the world. We used to have, we've always relied on foreign priests in our diocese. Foreign priests, though, in the past used to come from Ireland. Today, foreign priests come from Nigeria or India, as examples. And so they know that Montana's a nice place to be, and they look to come here. The process of getting a priest from very far away to downtown Great Falls is a long sort of immigration, legal, it's a long process. And the government's very careful with who they allow in as religious workers and who they grant visas to. And that can be complicated, but it's worth it. I mean,
Sure.
we try. Bishop Warfel in the past, and I know Bishop Fleming is very dedicated to keeping our parishes open.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways in which we do that is having priests, even if those priests come from very far away. And they're coming here in a certain missionary spirit, looking at us as the missions. And yet a lot of our parishioners and a lot of the people in our parishes greatly welcome priests from all over the world and help them get established, and people take care of their priest, and their priest takes care of the people in his parish. And we have a number of both religious order, but also priests from all over the world. So.
The role of the chancellor is really intimately connected to the ordinary. And we just went through a transition of ordinaries last week.
Right.
Or 2 weeks ago, I guess now already. What is that transition like, working that closely with the two bishops while we had the two, and now kind of aligning with Bishop Fleming? And,
Sure.
and what has that been like?
So I would say that the past year has really been a preparation time for Bishop Warfel, in the sense of trying to decide how we wanted to make a transition. Really, that started for us almost 2 years ago, when he decided and we started to prepare the documents to ask for a coadjutor bishop, and what that meant for the diocese. And could we afford something like that? And would it be a good fit? And all the things that went into, is that a good decision for us?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to submitting your resignation when you turn 75 and the Pope then looks for a bishop after that. So he did make that decision more than a year ago. And then during this time of transition with both bishops being here, I think it's been a good thing for both of them, both for Bishop Warfel to slowly sort of transition out, and for Bishop Fleming to come in, get to know the diocese. He did visit not all, but nearly all the parishes and clusters in the diocese, for whether that's weekend mass or even sometimes during the week. And then when that day a couple weeks ago finally happened, that Bishop Fleming became the ordinary of the diocese fully, and the Pope accepted Bishop Warfel's resignation, then there was a whole nother sort of set of steps to make that happen, both canonically. So in canon law, we might have things like the College of Consultors, recognizing that this transition has happened and was legitimate by the Pope, and but also our civil corporation. As you know,
Sure.
we're in charge. The bishop is in charge of the diocese as a corporation sole.
Sure.
And so everything to get that corporation sole now to be recognized, no longer in the person of Michael Warfel, but now in the person of Jeffrey Fleming. And with the state of Montana, the Secretary of State's office it's just a transition. It's part of the work of doing that, and working with the bishop to make sure that happens.
A lot of people call the diocese thinking that the chancellor's got all the answers to every parish history and all that kind of stuff. And you even mentioned that the chancellor is the chief archivist of the diocese, not necessarily of each parish.
Right.
How do you balance that of keeping track of all those records?
So there's two types of records, maybe. There's records that come out of this office that we try to keep. By old time standards, we used to keep a lot of paper.
Sure.
By modern standards, we keep a lot of digital backups of documents, and documents on a digital, like an email archive, that helps to, if somebody wants to look at some letter that the bishop wrote to you, but they want to look at it 60 years from now, will they be able to find it? And that's always the question. With our parishes, that's a whole different story. Parishes and their histories, here in this building have a very small file, and it's largely things that our parishes send us when it comes to their history. So if a parish were to do a new picture directory or have a 100th or 125th anniversary celebration of the parish, oftentimes somebody sits down and writes a history, and parishes nicely send that to us. We don't do our own historical research, we take what our parishes give us.
As the Chancellor, you also are responsible to help our parishes with certain legal issues or different things like that. Can you speak to the different kind of legal challenges? Because sadly, most people, when they hear legal challenges, they think of the issues that we've had in the past with priests and abuse and different things like that. But that's not really the legal issues that your office deals with.
Right. I mean, we have a number of kinds of legal issues. Sometimes those are difficult things for our parishes or for the diocese. So we have a parish right now going through a copyright lawsuit where, not intentionally, but somewhat unintentionally, they used pictures and documents in a way that, and so we help our parishes through that with our insurance company and with our own diocesan attorneys. The legal issues of transitioning to the new civil corporation, and like that's a legal issue that's not the worst of things. It's a great thing. We're dealing right now with a federal subpoena for a former religious order priest who used to be in the diocese, who had some issues in another diocese, but they're looking for information from here, and that takes a lot of time and a lot of work.
Sure.
And you have to do it right, which takes extra time sometimes. But legal issues aren't always a bad thing.
Right.
So, for instance, we worked with, we just finished it up within the last couple of months, an attorney in the Phoenix area, where one of our parishes on the far eastern side of the diocese was receiving a very large estate. And we're happy to help our parishes, whether it's work through difficult things or work through a good thing, like when somebody dies and leaves part of their estate to a parish. So we work on that with parishes. There's at least a good example of that. We're even working with the business office and with our property manager. We have a number of parishes that we deal with legal issues, things like oil and gas revenue, farm rentals. I mean, extra income that come in that some of our pastors are, not surprisingly, not experts in oil and gas leases. And so we, through the business office, through our own attorneys, with help from somebody in Billings, work that out for them. And it's a substantial income to many, especially on the eastern side of our diocese.
What would you say is the most fulfilling part of your role here within the diocese?
I think it is fulfilling to see that the things you do on a day-to-day basis do make a difference in working with the bishop, for instance. In trying to carry out, this is not Darren's agenda, it's not the Chancellor's office agenda, we carry out the bishop's pastoral plan for the diocese. And that's, even though things in the church happen slowly, it is easy to see over time how that gets played out.
The $1 million question that I'm sure many of the viewers are asking is, with the new ordinary, are there any major changes on the docket? As someone who is charged with trying to predict the future, as impossible as that might be, do you see anything major changing just because we have a new ordinary? So
first I would say, in a sense, no. Like, the path that we're generally on right now is stable. And outside of the Holy Father making major changes in one area or another, I don't see there being major changes within the diocese. We are not, Bishop Fleming is not going to close a lot of parishes. Bishop Fleming is not going to reorganize which parishes go and cooperate with other churches. Bishop Fleming is not likely to reassign every priest next year. Those are not going to happen. On the other hand, are things going to change? Absolutely. I think with anytime there's new leadership within a diocese or any of the places where any of our parishioners from throughout our diocese work, there's always those little changes that Bishop Fleming, both as a personality, but also his own interests, is much different than Bishop Warfel.
Mhm.
We see the technology coming out of this office all the time, and that's a result not of something that Bishop Warfel wants to push, because it's just not his, but it's something that is important to Bishop Fleming, and important that we reach people in a variety of ways. And so things like that are going to continue much more.
Is there anything that you feel that you want to make sure that people know about the Chancellor, or the role of the Chancellor, or even the role of the Chancery that we've not covered?
Sure. I mean, I do think with the amount of phone calls we receive every day, we're trying to help our parishes, whether that's through the business office or properties or HR, or through our ministries, with deacon formation, with people with the harvest, with lifelong formation, the Chancellor's office. We are trying to help our parishes every day. And I think people use us for that, from the amount of phone calls that come in. We do it all the time. And that the things that come out of this office are important. Keeping track of safe and sacred things locally at the parish, or much more broadly as a diocese, is an important thing for us in trying to make sure our children are safe. Keeping our priests supported is an important thing. Yeah, I would say we're here to help.
Okay. Darren, thank you for taking time today to sit down with me and talk about the role of the Chancellor, the transition a little bit between Bishop Fleming and Bishop Warfel, and just thank you for your ministry in the Diocese of Eastern Montana.
Good. Thanks, Thomas.